asked Margaret Hoarty for a little bit of an intro, and she gave me about 5 bullet points. Married to Tom, 42 years, 8 children, 7 grandchildren. Now, could we not spend an hour on that one alone? And I think they were high school sweethearts, as I recall. Yes, they were. She said Tom and I both graduated from Creighton undergrad in 1970. Tom got his BA and Margaret got her BSN. She also has an MSN from the Med Center, from the University of Nebraska Med Center in 1974. She currently volunteers as a faith community nurse at her home parish of St. Pius X. She teaches Tai Chi to older adults. She is on the advisory board for Knowles Mercy Spirituality Center. She and Tom are avid Blue Jay basketball fans. And as she said in her last bullet point, I guess I like to walk. So I'm glad she does. She is also, we could write books on Margaret Hoarty. She's a wonderful human being and a warm and caring person. And I thank her for being here, Margaret Hoarty.
Thank you, Maureen. That was a very kind introduction. I'm very grateful that Maureen has asked me to speak to you today and share my experiences walking the Camino de Santiago last fall. When I first saw the description of my talk on the Collaborative Ministry website, I read it aloud to my husband, Tom. The description said that we prayed and walked and met other pilgrims from around the world. Tom readily agreed and then clarified that he prayed a lot, mostly for his feet to stop hurting. Thank you too, Maureen, for sharing your technology skills in the preparation of this talk. And I'd also like to thank Susan Matz, Associate Vice President for University Ministry, for her helpful suggestions regarding the format of this presentation. I'm grateful to Sister Joyce Rupp, whose book about the Camino set me on this path. Most of all, thank you to my husband Tom, fellow pilgrim and companion on the journey. The Camino de Santiago, also known as the Way of St. James, is a pilgrim path that stretches 500 miles from St. John Pied de Port in France across the Pyrenees into Spain, through vineyards and olive groves, across the treeless plains of the Spanish Meseta, into the hills and mists of Galicia, to the vast cathedral in Santiago de Compostela. According to legend, the bones of St. James the Apostle are interred there. Since the year 1000, millions of pilgrims have traveled the path that lead to the cathedral, seeking a sense of the sacred along the way. The symbol of the Camino is the scallop shell, and the way is marked with both shells and yellow arrows. I had never heard of the Camino de Santiago until I purchased a book by Servite Sister Joyce Rupp in 2005. After reading Walk in a Relaxed Manner, Life Lessons from the Camino, I felt drawn to this journey. Tom and I were intrigued with the thought of walking this road together. We were already in our 60s. Were we physically capable of doing this? Could we really leave our obligations here for 5 or 6 weeks? If not now, when? We were in the last third of our lives. Was this the time? Was this the journey meant for us? In the end, our decision to walk the Camino was like so many decisions we make in life. It was a decision of the heart. The Camino extended us an invitation to experience hardship and grace, joy and mystery, an invitation that even now is beyond explanation, and we accepted. Tom and I left Omaha on Sunday, August 26, 2012, and flew to Madrid. We began walking on August 28th from St. John Pied de Port in France. Over the next 38 days, we walked 500 miles, reaching Santiago de Compostela on October 4th. We walked every day, as few as 5 miles some days, as many as 20 on just one other. On average, we covered 13 to 15 miles per day. After spending several days in Santiago, we traveled by bus to Finisterre, which long ago was thought to be the very end of the earth. We returned to Madrid by train and flew home on October 10th. We had been gone for 45 days. Mary Ruth Brose and Barbara Flynn say that the art of pilgrimage is about slowing down and waking up. As we slow down and pay attention, walking itself becomes a way of praying. We see the holy in the ordinary. We reached Santiago by walking each day, taking one step and then another. Today I'll share some experiences of our Camino journey as a sort of Lenten map of possibilities. Lent is a journey, a pilgrimage that beckons throughout these 6 weeks and asks us to look at our lives with new eyes. Martin Palmer says that true pilgrimage changes lives whether we go halfway around the world or out to our own backyard. What is in your backyard? What part of your life is calling for renewal? Those who leave their homes and become pilgrims on a sacred historical path have the opportunity to learn lessons during their pilgrimage that are often metaphors for similar struggles, challenges, and joys that we experience on the path of our everyday lives. I hope that some of our experiences and lessons will resonate with you. When Tom and I decided that we were going to walk the Camino, we began to prepare for it. We systematically dove into the task of gathering books, reading Camino websites and blogs, visiting our local backwoods store, and practicing Rosetta Stone Spanish on our computer. We were going to be the best informed and well-prepared pilgrims on the Camino. We began walking through the streets and parks of Omaha to ready ourselves for the trip ahead. Our preparation proved essential. Every day of our Camino walk brought us renewed appreciation for the work we had done. During this preparation, we came to realize that it was impossible to plan for every contingency that might arise. We knew that in order to experience the trip we wanted, we had to let go of trying to compulsively control it. Our mantra became, prepare for the journey and then let go. Except one of us had a harder time learning this lesson, and the lesson occurred before we even left Omaha. With our plane tickets secured, we made reservations for our first 2 nights, the only nights we would know for sure where we would be staying. Arranging bus transportation from Madrid to St. John via Pamplona was the next task. It was imperative that we arrive in St. John by the evening of August 27th to keep on schedule. But every time I tried to purchase bus tickets online, I was thwarted in my efforts. Neither I, armed with 3 different credit cards, nor our travel agent, nor our bank seemed capable of purchasing those tickets. Emails to the bus company went unanswered. The website appeared to be malfunctioning, and there was nothing I could do about it. Every time I checked the diagram of available seats on the bus, the number dwindled. One day, 8 seats vanished in a matter of minutes. A few days later, 5 more seats were gone. In the midst of my efforts, Tom gently suggested that perhaps this was a way we were being led into the spirit of the Camino, to really let go of our desire to have control. Wasn't this what we said we wanted? Well, yes, but I really, really wanted the assurance of those tickets. I finally succumbed to Tom's wisdom because, in truth, there was nothing else I could do. I was surprised at how attached I had become to the idea of buying those tickets. I couldn't help myself from compulsively checking the website once again a week before our departure. To my dismay, I discovered there were only 2 seats left on the bus. I sat staring sadly at those 2 lonely blue seats. What were the chances they would be available the following week for 2 Americans needing a ride? I couldn't bear to visit that website again. I didn't want to let go. I wanted to hold those bus tickets in my hand Of course, you can probably guess the end of the story. When we arrived at the station in Madrid, we were informed that there were 2 seats left for Pamplona. We smiled at each other as we boarded the bus. While preparation for the journey is vital, so is the art of letting go. The truth is, we use up tremendous amounts of energy in life trying to control it. A good friend, Father Tom O'Brien, had a favorite saying, "Let go and let God." It's a thought worth pondering for us all. Knowing that we would be carrying all our belongings on our backs for the entire Camino led us to be discerning about our choices. We ticked off the needed items in our heads: pants, shirts, socks, underwear, toiletries, ponchos, guidebook, journals. The pounds added up so quickly. How could these items feel so heavy? What was essential? What could we live without? This stripping down process invited us to look at the stuff of our lives with new eyes. We looked forward to the experience of living a pared-down existence. Early in our journey, we realized that many pilgrims brought too much stuff. They struggled and heaved under the weight of their packs. A woman from South Africa amazed us by climbing the first 5 miles up the Pyrenees with a 26-pound backpack. That afternoon, she sat in the albergue, exhausted from her exertions and the heat. At the urging of a fellow pilgrim, she spread all her belongings on her bed, examining each item one by one in an attempt to decide what she could jettison. Watching her during this process was a fascinating experience. Her face was a portrait of indecision and angst, highlighting her emotional ties to her belongings. And at the end of the day, even in the midst of her fatigue, she had parted with very little. What a metaphor this was for our own lives. Our packs often filled to overflowing with grudges, hurts and dissatisfactions, disappointments. As travelers in a consumer society, our attachment to physical possessions weighs us down as we struggle to find room for our things, find time to maintain our things, as we deal with the clutter and chaos that our things bring. Yet, doggedly, we continue. We drag our stuff, both physical and emotional, pushing that stuff down into the backpacks of our lives, making room for even more stuff. Tom and I saw monuments along the Camino covered with items that pilgrims had discarded along the way, tributes to their attempt to lighten their loads. Shoes, hats, gloves, books, lipstick, jewelry. Masses of pilgrim belongings that weighed their owners down, vivid reminders that many of the things we carry become burdens rather than blessings. Take a moment to consider lightening your load, divesting yourself of those items or emotions that seem too heavy. Carefully examine the items in your pack one by one, holding them up to the light with a critical eye. What do you really need? What is it that is drawing you away from the source of goodness, from God? Choose carefully and walk with a lighter pack. One of our desires for our Camino journey was a fuller experience of simplicity. We yearned for a time together filled with basic things: eating, sleeping, walking. By divesting ourselves of life's familiar complexities, we hope to create a less is more existence. Our life on the Camino was bounded by simple wants and needs and pleasures. Reducing our needs to essentials increased our sense of gratitude for what we had. A juicy peach took on new meaning. To paraphrase Buddha, enough became a feast. Once a week, we searched for an internet cafe so we could send an email detailing our adventures to family and friends at home. In late September, this is what we wrote. On a typical day, we leave our accommodations about 7:30, have a quick breakfast, and walk 3 to 4 miles, then stop for a mid-morning coffee or tea and a chocolate croissant or toast. We walk for another 4 miles or so and then stop for lunch, often a bocadilla, ham, cheese, or egg on a baguette. After lunch, we walk another 3 to 4 miles and stop for a fruit drink or soft drink and fruit or nuts. We finish our day's walk between 4 and 5 o'clock. That's optimistic. But on longer mileage days, we have not arrived at our destination until 6 o'clock or later. We find a place to stay, get settled, take showers, wash our clothes, and hang them to dry. Some of the albergues serve a communal meal, and that is always welcome. If none is available, we find a restaurant and peruse the pilgrim menu or the menu del dia, the menu of the day. Dinner concludes about 9 o'clock. We write in our journals, and then we are ready to sleep so that we can get up and do it all again the next day. We concluded our email by saying, life here on the Camino is really very simple. We walk, search for places to rest, eat, sleep, and enjoy the company of other pilgrims. If this all sounds incredibly boring, believe me when I say it was not. We derived satisfaction from conversation with pilgrim friends, a good meal, a place to sleep, and the prospect of brand new adventures each morning. The simplicity of our journey was a source of its greatest rewards. It's difficult to get lost while walking the Camino because it is one of the world's best marked footpaths, but it is essential for pilgrims to pay attention. The way is marked with a system of shells and yellow arrows, flechas amarillas. When we began walking from St. John in late August, Tom and I soon became vigilant to the presence of way markers, always on the alert for a shell or an arrow. Sometimes a yellow arrow was painted on a pile of rocks, or perhaps on a tree. Decorative shells were embedded in sidewalks or were placed on the sides of buildings in cities. Small monuments pointed us in the direction of Santiago. We always felt more at ease when we had just seen a yellow arrow or a shell. When we hurried, we tended to miss things. We had to slow down to pay attention. In the cities, we often felt inundated by the sheer volume of noise, as well as competing advertisements and signs. Yellow arrows lay hidden on the sides of traffic signs, making them difficult to locate. City distractions, the crowds of people, the noise of traffic, smells from restaurants, people calling out to each other. These things made it hard to focus. We breathed sighs of relief as we left the city hubbub and made our way into the quiet countryside, where the waymarks were more visible. It was tempting to follow another pilgrim when the path was ambiguous, hoping that this person knew the way. We knew of 2 pilgrims who followed a fellow traveler for an hour in the early morning darkness, only to realize that this person had missed a sign and they were all going the wrong direction. Paying attention is difficult in a world that values multitasking. My mother-in-law used to tell me in a slow voice that she could only do one thing at a time. As a young person, I dismissed that notion. My older self acknowledges its wisdom. When we pay attention, the ordinary becomes holy. We decrease the chance of getting lost in life, inattentively following the wrong path. When we pay attention, we slow down. When we pay attention, we notice the signs around us, and ponder where they might lead. In this photo, I am sitting with my feet on a chair, having just received the ministrations of the local foot guru. Each day, this man traveled from a nearby village to the little town of Santo Domingo, where he generously offered his expertise to pilgrims. There was no official fee, just a basket marked donativo, so that pilgrims could make free will donations for his services. He knew the effect Camino terrain could have on a pilgrim's lower extremities. Lancing blisters, applying antiseptics, wrapping ankles and knees and feet were his specialties. His willingness to share his knowledge and skill was one of the many instances of kindnesses extended to us on the Camino. Such kindness was a daily occurrence. When we arrived in Nájera after a long day, we found the first two albergues completo, or full, and the large municipal albergue with no vacant beds. We were tired and hungry and longing for a place to rest. Camino laggards that we were, there was a line of even later pilgrims arriving after us who were also seeking shelter. The albergue manager reached for his phone and quickly convinced the owner of a small private hostel nearby to open its doors, providing us a place to spend the night. One evening after dinner at a small restaurant in the town of Zubiri, the skies unexpectedly darkened and a driving rain began pounding the walls and the windows. When the weather showed no signs of improvement, we resigned ourselves to walking back to our accommodations in the rain, minus our ponchos. Looking at us with sympathy, the restaurant manager generously offered the services of his son, who drove us back. What a gift that was to us. We were convinced Tom's white hair must have been the deciding factor in this act of kindness. Pilgrims readily shared what they had with others. Chocolate, fruit, and nuts were generously offered by those who had to those who had not. Being open to the kindness of others can be a difficult task. Giving to others means that we are in control. Opening ourselves to kindness offered by someone else means that we have opened ourselves to vulnerability, which can be an uncomfortable place. Several years ago, when I was in the midst of a difficult and extended illness, I struggled with graciously accepting the many offers of help coming my way. One of my daughters gently suggested that while I was a pro at giving, I was a rank amateur at receiving. Years later, her comment still gives me pause. If we travel through life only as a giver, we miss the opportunity to let others assume that role. We deny others the gifts that that role imparts. Be generous and open yourself to the kindness of others. I love this photo. While walking on the Camino, we spied this field of sunflowers, and when we got closer, we saw that someone had made a happy face on one of them, and I'll show you a close-up of that. Tom and I would not have survived the Camino without relying on a sense of humor. Early in our walk, thinking about the many family adventures we had shared while traveling with our children, I turned to my husband and said, "We've taken some really crazy trips in our time, haven't we?" Stepping carefully to dodge the largest rocks on the path before us, he replied in a deadpan voice, "Yes, we have, and this trip has just jumped to the top of the list." As we neared the outskirts of the city of Logroño at the end of a hot 18-mile day, we passed a large, forbidding-looking building. The sign said, "Crematoria," crematorium. Tom muttered, "Sign me up." He is funny. The ability to laugh at ourselves became our salvation in the midst of challenging situations. Approaching the town of Viana at lunchtime, we stopped at a restaurant that looked promising. Lunch was served until 2 o'clock. It was fast approaching that hour. Our waitress kept one eye on the clock as she waited for us to order. We knew pescado was fish and polo was chicken, but we were stymied by the word bistec. Our dictionary was buried in the backpacks we had gratefully deposited outside the door. Speaking louder and with some frustration, she tried to get us to understand the meaning of the word. The clock continued to tick. Finally, in a moment of exasperation, she placed both hands on her hips, leaned forward, and brayed a loud moo. "Oh," we said, "beef." "Well, no thank you," we replied, mindful that nothing can compare to Nebraska beef. and anticlimactically chose the pescado and polo instead. One of the funniest things that happened to us took place in the sleepy little village of Castro Jerez. We arrived late in the day, this seems to be a theme, trudging into town, eager to put down our packs and take off our shoes. We located a casa rural, a bed and breakfast where we hoped to spend the night, and knocked confidently on the door with anticipation. No answer. We knocked again, this time louder and with more determination. A very long pause. Then, slowly, the top half of the door opened, and an older Spanish woman leaned out and peered at us. Eyes narrowed with suspicion. We were taken aback, but not to be deterred. In unison, we greeted her with our friendliest "Hola," and then inquired in our fractured Spanish if she had a room for two. Her eyes narrowed again as she leaned forward to inspect us more closely, and then asked in an imperious tone, "Matrimonio?" Matrimonio? Oh, matrimonio. She wants to know if we were married. "Sí, sí," we replied as I waggled my wedding band aloft. Here we were, 64-year-old pilgrims, married 42 years, dead ringers for the Beverly Hillbillies, dusty, tired, and hungry, and the mistress of the house wanted to be certain we were in a legitimate relationship before she would rent us a room. She wanted to ensure there would be no hanky-panky in her abode that evening. What she didn't realize was that we were far too tired for hanky-panky anyway. There's the sunflower. William Arthur Ward says a well-developed sense of humor is the pole that adds balance to your steps as you walk the tightrope of life. Our Camino walk taught us to not take ourselves too seriously. It taught us that a sense of humor enriches the journey. Tom and I were humbled on the Camino on a daily basis. The sweeping vistas of Spanish landscapes, the breathtaking beauty of the mountains, jaw-dropping sunrises and sunsets, the vast expanse of ocean at the end of our journey. These were reminders of the mysterious workings of creation. St. Benedict says that the beginnings of humility lie in recognizing that we are not God. I believe the beginnings of humility are often seated in situations that are outside our comfort zone. I can say without reservation that walking the Camino de Santiago was the most strenuous physical activity I have ever undertaken. I realized quickly that it was not for the faint of heart, and I learned that humility is embedded in the path. It was a tremendously humbling time for me, outside my comfort zone for sure. Despite our preparation, I often felt blindsided by the physical rigors of the trip. If you begin the Camino in St. Jean Pied de Port, you must climb the Pyrenees to travel from France into Spain. Once you have reached the peak at Col de la Peter, you must walk down a very steep, very rocky path to reach Roncesvalles, the first Spanish town you will encounter. Never in my life could I have imagined such rocks. I thought to myself, did Joyce mention this in her book? Did I miss something? Had I skimmed over that part? The descent was so steep that every step became a daunting exercise in maintaining my balance and avoiding injury. When the following day brought more of the same, my feet began to rebel, imploring me to find some other way to travel. Besides the difficult surfaces we encountered, our feet inevitably swelled by the end of the day, despite our frequent rest breaks. Only after many days of walking did our feet adjust to their expanded role. I became aware how deeply and profoundly humbled I was to consider the wonder of my feet, parts of my body I rarely give heed to. I became aware of how grateful I was, how very grateful, that they had made it through another day. I knew I was home free when I wrote in my journal one evening, "My shoes and I are friends again." As Tom and I massaged each other's feet at the end of the day, a gospel image of Jesus bending low, washing the feet of his apostles, came to mind. I knew that humility had found a deep resting place in me. Living in the moment became the hallmark of our Camino walk. Our lives had been reduced to very simple terms. Distractions were limited. We carried a cell phone at the insistence of our children, a bit of ironic role reversal, but checked it only every 3 or 4 days. We had no other electronic equipment except our camera. We carried no books or reading material except our guidebook. Our existence differed markedly from our existence back in what I called the real world. We were suspended in an arbitrary and somewhat artificial existence that gave a particular urgency to the moment at hand, and we loved it. The photo on the screen was taken by our English friend Caroline early in our journey as we ventured on a whim into the cold water of the river Arga. We could hear the sound of the river as we walked along the path beside it, and when an opening from the path to the river appeared, we could think of nothing more enticing than abandoning our packs and shoes and wading in. As our feet murmured thanks, we became immersed in the intense pleasure of that moment, holding on to each other to keep from falling into the uneven surface of the riverbed. We savored the immediacy of our reactions and responses. We reveled in the freedom of that experience as time became elastic and expansive. To live in the moment requires intentionality. It requires clearing the decks of competing thoughts from the past, as well as competing thoughts of the future. It requires paying attention to what's right here, right now, and then giving in to the experience of right here, right now, whether that experience is positive or negative. Living in the moment means discovering the presence of God in our midst. If you're familiar with the Winnie the Pooh Chronicles by A.A. Milne, you may remember this endearing exchange between Piglet and Pooh. "What day is it?" "It's today," squeaked Piglet. "My favorite day," said Pooh. How many of us could make that claim so assuredly? Since our return from Spain, a number of people have asked us if there was ever a time when we dreaded the thought of getting up in the morning, facing another day of walking 15 more miles. Our honest answer is no. We looked forward to the adventure of each day, to the unexpected pleasures as well as challenges we were certain it would bring. There was never a moment on the Camino when we wished ourselves to be anywhere else. Living in the moment was a true gift of the Camino that we cherish still. Our journey rested on these intentions: to walk as far as we were able each day, to leave our day's destination an open question, to cultivate moments of silence, to get to know other pilgrims along the way, to take in the beauty of our surroundings. Every pilgrim walked his or her own journey. The truth of that journey was a process that developed and grew. Because we had the luxury of 45 days allotted for this trip, we were not so burdened by the constraints of time. We knew we would reach Santiago eventually. Speed was not an essential part of our journey. It was tempting to judge others' journeys. Donna, a pilgrim from New Zealand, rose each morning at 5 a.m. and walked in the dark for 2.5 hours, arriving at her destination by 1 in the afternoon. I remember thinking, is she crazy? After eating dinner with her one evening, Tom and I discovered that she loved the solitude of the early morning. She loved seeing the constellations in the still dark sky, reversed from their usual orientation in the southern hemisphere where she lived. She was traveling the Camino solo, which is what she wanted. She was being true to her own journey. Pilgrims whose backpacks became too heavy hired transport services to carry their packs from one town to another. Pilgrims who were tired or injured or who got behind their planned schedules took the bus from one town to another. Some pilgrims opted to skip entire sections of the Camino, such as the Meseta, the plains, because they heard it was too hot, too dusty, too boring, or their time was limited. Occasionally, we would hear comments from pilgrims criticizing the shortcuts taken by others. It seems to be part of our human nature to judge, comparing someone else's journey with our own, questioning the truth of someone else's path. Judging presumes we know all there is to know about another's path. Our pilgrim friend Sally from Belgium chose to have her backpack transported because of the swelling she experienced in her arms, swelling that was a result of breast cancer surgery. Because of back problems, Ron from Brazil also hired a transport service. He would not have been able to complete the Camino without this assistance. People came to the Camino with different motivations, expectations, and experiences, drawn to this path for a variety of reasons. Whether a pilgrim realized it or not, he or she came in faith that contained a seed of hope. Hope that his or her life would be enriched or changed in a substantial way by traveling this road. By the end of our own journey, we recognized that each pilgrim we met had indeed changed, whether he or she was aware of those changes or not. Our days are filled with opportunities to render judgment and criticize a fellow pilgrim's walk through life. It may be time to focus on our own journey and ask, is my journey true? Am I on a path that is taking me where I need to be? This is a photo that always makes me smile. In the upper left, you see our walking sticks, which we have discarded for the moment. On the right lie our shoes, faithful companions that we have removed. While walking the Camino, other pilgrims passed us right and left. This did not bother us in the least. We desired to fully experience whatever the Camino had to offer. We felt a sense of freedom and peace. No need to hurry. We were walking at a pace consistent with the true nature of our journey. On a trek like the Camino de Santiago, it is easy to get caught up in the getting there. All pilgrims knew that there meant Santiago, our destination, the end of the journey. Getting there required fortitude, a daily commitment to walking long distances, climbing steep hills, battling the intense sun, walking on rocky stretches of road along the way, gearing up for the inevitable rain. The question, how do we pace ourselves? How do we know our limits? There were pilgrims who rose earlier and earlier each day. There were those who took pride in walking longer and longer distances, paragons of athletic achievement. Not only longer, but faster and faster. Younger pilgrims seemed particularly bent on reaching Santiago in record time. Other pilgrims matched their stride with us for a while, engaged in conversation, then moved on at a faster pace. We survived on the Camino by finding our own pace, becoming aware of our limits, stopping to rest frequently, paying attention to what our bodies were telling us. Inherent in finding your own pace is limiting the inevitable comparison of yourself to others. This is difficult in a world that prizes speed and thrives on competition. Younger pilgrims were forced to slow their pace when they were visited by overuse syndromes, tendinitis, and shin splints. We found that walking the Camino in our 60s had some definite advantages because we were aware of our body's limitations before we began. And we were more attentive to the care they needed, the slower pace required to complete the journey. We couldn't have walked faster if we wanted to. Slowing down, finding your own pace, knowing your limits, all are vital parts of pilgrimage. One of the things Tom and I most looked forward to on the Camino was meeting pilgrims from other countries and cultures. We were not disappointed. At a communal meal on the second day of our trip, we met 30 other pilgrims from Germany, Italy, France, Japan, Norway, Australia, South Africa, Canada, Brazil, the United Kingdom, the US, and Spain. We continued to cross paths with many of these same pilgrims throughout our Camino journey. For pilgrims on the Camino, there are no positions of power or influence. There are few expensive clothes, no fancy cars. Every bunk in the albergue is just as plain as the next. The day dawns for all at the same time. Each pilgrim walks the same path and endures the same hills, rocks, heat, and rain. The Camino treats everyone equally. While walking in Spain, we exchanged the greeting, Buen Camino, which means good journey, with other pilgrims many, many times a day. We were able to converse easily with most other pilgrims because almost all of them spoke English. We realized how limited our language skills were compared to people living in other countries. After our greeting, the next question was always, where are you from? One memorable exchange involved a young man in his 20s. His response to our question was, Germany, Munich. And you, he inquired in return. The United States, we replied. Oh, where's that, he asked. After a momentary pause, we all burst out laughing at his quick tongue-in-cheek reply. That encounter caused us to think about our perceived place in the world as U.S. citizens. Were we really so special? All these pilgrims from all these countries seemed to be leading lives that were interesting and fulfilling. They were not constantly thinking about us and our world influence. We were not the center of the universe. What did we talk about with other pilgrims? Not about the work we did, not much about our families. There was some talk of international politics. We talked about our feet, especially during the first few days of walking. We talked about why we were walking the Camino, about how we dealt with its challenges. We talked about the unexpected joys and the funny things that happened along the way. And here's the fascinating thing. The friendships we forged felt solid and strong and dear, as if we shared a long history with these people we had known for only a few short weeks. Meeting people from other countries and other continents while walking in the footsteps of those who traveled this same path 1,000 years before imbued us with a vibrant sense of solidarity with other pilgrims and brought to life the realization that we are all one. The ground itself had been sanctified by centuries of pilgrim footsteps laid upon its surface. It was a privilege and a blessing to share this sacred path with our fellow pilgrim travelers. I'll just say a word about this slide. On the left is a scene of a communal meal, and on the right is, we were on a very high ledge above this scene, and we turned the corner and all of a sudden this appeared, and someone had planted bushes in the shape of all the countries of the world. Joyce Rupp inscribed our copy of her book, Walk with Hope, Be Open to Surprise. I love these words, which became for me a Camino refrain. Carrie Egan says that hope is the emotional center of pilgrimage. She writes, one journeys perhaps out of devotion, or a longing for adventure, or a confused and even desperate searching. But at the emotional heart of all those things is the idea that things can change for the better if one is willing to go somewhere, a place where other people have gone with great hope and been changed. Benedictine Sister Joan Chittister says hope is the belief that good can come from anything. Hope is essential to life's pilgrimage. It gives us a reason to get up in the morning and lay our head on our pillow each night. Hope is a potent spiritual fuel. To walk with hope on life's journey is to walk with the expectation and belief that no matter where we are on the journey, God's love is present. One afternoon, we stopped at a small cafe, and on the wall was written in beautiful calligraphy, "El Camino siempre sorprende." The Camino always surprises. We knew it to be true. Brother David Steindl-Rast says that surprise is the beginning of gratefulness. He contends that things and events that trigger surprise are actual catalysts for the gift of gratitude. It was easy being open to surprise on the Camino. With fewer distractions, we noticed more. We were sitting, or should I say walking, ducks, just waiting to be surprised. The photo on the right was taken during our second day of walking as we climbed the Pyrenees. Moments before, the mountainside was shrouded in a thick and heavy gray mist. We could hear the tinkling sound of the sheep bells on the hillside, but we couldn't see the sheep, not a one. And then, in the space of just a few minutes, the mist evaporated, the sun shone in a deep blue sky, and there was Tom, surrounded by his sheep friends on a bright green hillside. We were surprised, and we were grateful. Thank you for being such an attentive audience and allowing me the opportunity to relive my Camino journey. There are handouts on your tables, and there are index cards that are stamped with the Camino scallop shell. What I would like to do is invite you to look over the Camino experiences and lessons that are listed on your handout, lessons I've shared with you today, and perhaps choose one as a Lenten focus. Write it down on the card and keep it in a place where you'll see it each day, on your desk, in your purse, on a mirror, in your pocket. Take some time to meditate on how your own life is a pilgrimage. Remember that your destination, Easter, is really just the beginning of a new journey. Keep walking, and buen camino.
So do you want to answer some questions? And we'll have them bringing in some paella and a little Spanish wine. No, this is ministry.
Spanish wine was the best, and it was so inexpensive. We drank a lot of it. Anesthesia for the feet.
How much weight did you lose?
I knew somebody was going to ask that question. She wanted to know how much weight we lost. Well, there are a couple of things to that question. We both did get sick the last week with a GI bug, a gastrointestinal illness. So I think we probably did lose more weight than we thought we might. We each lost probably about 10 pounds. It was, you know, the exertion of walking all day, it was difficult to keep up the caloric intake you needed, although I tried. The food was very good. So I think most people probably lose at least 5 pounds if you indeed walk the entire way.
What was re-entry like, coming back here?
Maureen asked what re-entry was like. It was unbelievable. We had never been gone for longer than 15 days. And this was 3 times that. And honestly, I felt as if I was in another world, which indeed I was. The first thing I did the day after we got back was to go to the post office and pick up our mail. I practically needed a Mack truck to do it. And I sat at our kitchen table for a day and a half just going through the mail, and I had a big sack there, filled the sack with all the recycling, because you know 90% of what you get goes into the recycling. We both felt just a little disoriented. It was difficult to get back into the pace of the things, all of our commitments here. There were a few days where I just felt like we were kind of in a cloud. So yes, re-entry was like nothing I had ever experienced. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we walked a lot. We bought our plane tickets in February. Then we bought our shoes in March and our backpacks in April. And in April, we started walking in earnest. We walked all over. We went to Neil Woods and did a lot of up and down until we discovered ticks, and then we ditched that. Every night when my husband would get home from work, we would put our shoes on and go walking, and then we would do longer distances on the weekend. The most number of miles we walked before we left for the trip was 13 miles, which we did on a Saturday. And we had several other, 12-mile days. But we felt that we really needed to do that in order to, ready ourselves for the trip. And we were very, very glad that we had done that. We experienced, once we were there, we felt like, yes, that was really the right thing to do. What happened, first of all, the summer was so horribly hot, as you remember. It was, some days we were walking and it was 102. And we just thought, well, that just helps improve our cardiovascular, ability. About August 1st, so we started walking in earnest in April. We started using our backpacks in May, and we gradually added to the weight so that we got up to, our goal was 16 or 17 pounds in our backpack. And then we walked throughout June and July, and by August 1st, we looked at each other, and we were both just so ready to go. We just wanted to leave, but we knew we had to keep walking to stay in condition. So August was kind of a hard month because every day we were out there slogging along when we were wishing that we were already in Spain. A number of people have asked us that. We used one pair of shoes, and those were the shoes that we broke in before we left. And they're not in bad condition. I would think they would be. If you could see the rocks we walked on, but most people only used one pair of shoes. I had exchanged emails with someone who wrote a kind of nuts and bolts type book about walking the Camino, a very practical book, and I had asked her that same question, and she assured me that we could get through with one pair. It would be difficult if you, well, first of all, you'd be carrying another pair of shoes, and then if you bought a pair there, you wouldn't have broken them in, and you would probably have worse blisters. Charlie. Yeah, after we got back, we went out walking. When we reached Santiago, it was the strangest thing to wake up the next morning and think that we weren't going to walk 15 miles. Yes, I would say that our walking, when we walk now, we relive the Camino. So that, and that's just a huge gift. Preparing for the Camino was really part of the journey. The Camino itself was the journey. And now we talk about our experiences. And those experiences, I believe, I can tell you what I feel today, but it's very interesting because, the greater distance there is between us and our trip, there are other things that come up, and I'm sure that even in 10 years I'll have a different take on things, I'll have other memories that will surface. We reread our journals together, and the first month that we were back, both of us dreamed about the Camino every night. We were always on the Meseta, which many people didn't care for it. The Meseta, it's the plains. It was very hot. Well, people said it was hot. It was in the upper 80s in September. We didn't think that was bad at all. But that's where we pictured ourselves. And both of us would agree that that was probably our favorite part. It looked like Nebraska. It was flat. It was the land. It was the sky. It was just this vast openness that we find, we like that. Many people liked Galicia the best. That was colder and rainier. It's very Celtic. It's very much like Ireland. We got sick when we were in Galicia, so that didn't really. Yes?
I understand there are lots of different routes.
Yes, there are.
And that people don't always do a whole 500 miles. How did you decide on this route, and why did you decide to do
Oh, those are great questions. Yes, there are many different routes. There's the Camino del Norte, which hugs the seacoast by the Bay of Biscay, which is north of the, what we walked is called the Camino Frances, the French route, and that's the traditional route that people have taken over the centuries. More pilgrims walk that Camino route than any other. There's also a Camino Primitivo route that comes down from the north, and I'm trying to remember where that hooks up. There's a Camino Portuguese that comes up through Portugal. So there are a number of different routes. And we considered doing the Camino del Norte. We had traveled to Spain in 2007, and it was after we had read Joyce's book. So we did try to find the Camino in the north, and with some difficulty, but we did find it. And we walked a few miles on that. Beautiful, absolutely gorgeous, because you have these views of the sea. But we decided in favor of the French route, or the traditional route, because it is more well marked and there are more places to stay. The albergue system on the Camino many of them are run by religious orders. They're large dormitory-like structures with bunk beds. The biggest one we stayed in, I think, had over 200 beds, and the room we were in had over 30 pilgrims. Earplugs are essential. We have a friend who gave us industrial strength earplugs before we left. So that system of hostels and bed and breakfasts and albergues is conducive to a walk like this, because really there's a town probably every 3 to 5 miles. The longest stretch we walked without any kind of cafe or lodging was 11 miles, and that was on the Meseta. Ken?
When did all this Camino business start? How many years?
It started around the year 1000.
About 1,000.
Mm-hmm. So people have been doing this for a long time. Tom had a thought while we were walking. He said, now, those pilgrims who walked in the Middle Ages, if they walked to Santiago, they would have had to walk home. Now, there's a thought for you. Get there and turn around and walk back. Mary?
What did you do if somebody got hurt?
If you were near one of the cities, I mean, Spain is not a third world country, so there are things available. But if you had a heart attack in the middle of that stretch of the Meseta that was 11 miles long, that would have been a problem. We tend to be trusting people. I know we did have thoughts of that, though, especially when you go as an older person. There are, as far as injuries, people are very attuned to that. And as I said, these small towns are spaced, every 3 to 5 miles apart. So then, and most people had a cell phone, they could call and eventually someone would get to you. But, people, I remember one pilgrim, I think he had a severe nosebleed, and he had to go to the largest city, which was farther ahead on the route. And after he was treated, he had them drive him back to where he experienced that problem, and then he started walking again. He didn't want to say that he walked the Camino, but he missed this little stretch.
Let me
Thank you very much. A lot of people, especially in the book group that we're doing, we're reading Joyce Rupp's book during Lent, have asked about what it looks like. There is a movie called The Way that stars Martin Sheen that is on Netflix. Somebody just told me it's also in Redbox, so if you're interested in seeing more of these videos. And thank you, Margaret. It was absolutely wonderful and inspirational.